Hi, everyone. Happy afternoon, good morning, and if anyone's in the United States or in Europe, good evening. By way of introduction, my name is Irene Liu, and I'm the News Lab lead for the Asia Pacific region here at Google. And today we're going to host this town hall to talk about the COVID-19 Vaccine Counter Misinformation Open Fund. It is an open forum town hall. We are going to talk a lot about the fund itself and the application process. What we're going to do is I'm going to start with a presentation, and hopefully that will answer many of your questions. But after that, we will have an open question and answer session. So as we go through the presentation, please feel free to add your questions to the live chat on the right-hand side of your screen, and I promise we will get to them after the presentation. So with that, why don't we get started? Okay, so as you mentioned, this is focused on the COVID-19 Vaccine Counter Misinformation Open Fund, which is a program of the Google News Initiative. Now, the Google News Initiative, as many of you all know, is Google's effort to support the news industry. And one of the key things that we really focus on is working in partnership with news organizations on fighting misinformation. And specifically, the COVID-19 Vaccine Counter Misinformation Open Fund, which was announced last week, is really to make up to $3 million available to support journalistic efforts to effectively fact-check misinformation about the COVID-19 immunization process. And we really want to make sure that we are seeking to reach audiences that are underserved by fact-checking or are specifically targeted by misinformation. And so, as you can imagine, that is a very, very broad topic, but we really are, the mission of this is to take the best of journalism and the best of fact-checking, work in collaboration with healthcare providers and knowledgeable experts in this area, specifically focused on the issue of COVID-19 immunization. Now, we know that certainly there's a lot of misinformation and ongoing concern is vaccine hesitancy with regard to the COVID-19 vaccine. And so what we want to do is we want to help to support very quick action to counter this misinformation at a moment when people need it the most. We know that around the world, we are starting to see people become vaccinated. More and more vaccines are increasingly approved in various countries. And there's just a lot of information, some of it quite technical, and there's a lot of fear. So how do we make sure that the best of what you do as journalists can work in partnership with healthcare providers, as well as healthcare experts and fact checkers, to make sure that the information that we want gets to the people who need it the most. This is a global fund, so the $3 million will be distributed across the world, but it is very much open to geographies in the Asia and Pacific geographies. One thing I want to note here is that the deadline for this application process is January 31st, 2020. Here, if you see the time, it is in Pacific time, so that's basically the West Coast of the United States. What that means, in fact, is that for those of us in Asia, since we live in the future and we are ahead, it actually means that you have a few hours into February 1st to submit your application. But the reason why I've put January 31st here on this slide is because you never know with technology, you never know if there's going to be an issue with your own internet service. Best idea is to make sure that you file your application well in advance of the deadline. Now, journalists, we love a deadline. We love to wait till the last minute, but I would really encourage you to make sure that you do submit your application and confirm that it's been submitted by January 31st in our time zone. We will not make exceptions or extensions for any applications. So really, this is a very, very hard deadline. as you can see, these are all of the different geographies within Asia Pacific that are eligible to apply. So your organization must be incorporated in one of these locations if you're based in Asia Pacific. If you are based in another part of the world, but you just happen to be watching this town hall, please go to our website and check the available geographies, because all of the countries are listed, and you must make sure that the country that your organization is incorporated in is on the list. So let's talk a little bit about this fund. First and foremost is that this is an open fund. This is an open call, and we are looking for creative, out-of-the-box ideas and ways to really reach those who are most affected by misinformation, and also those who are, really underserved by fact-checking in general. And so when we think about being underserved by fact-checking, what does this mean? It could mean people who don't have access to mobile phones or do not have reliable internet access, people who are perhaps, in populations that are targeted for COVID-19 vaccine misinformation or broadly vaccine misinformation. Really, think through how your application, how your project that you are submitting is really targeting some of these populations. We don't have any restrictions in terms of the size of news organizations. So large and small, nonprofit, for-profit, on any medium. So digital, print, video, etc. And really focused on producing original journalistic content. So organizations that have reporters who are producing content are the ones that we are really working to submit, to seek applications from. So Google will fund selected projects up to $1 million each. This can cover up to 80% of the total overall budget of the project. So we do expect that applicants are willing to contribute 20% of the overall budget for the project too. So it's not just going to be funded only by the open fund. We are asking that 80% will be funded by Google, up to 80%, and then 20% or more is funded by the applicant. If it's a collaboration and you have multiple organizations, then what we're looking at is the total budget for all the different organizations that are participating in the collaboration. Another really important note is that applicants cannot ask for an amount higher than 50% of their annual total income. So this is revenue, not profit. You must make sure that whatever you're asking for is no more than half of your annual total income. If you are a collaboration that includes a number of smaller organizations, maybe some NGOs and others, what that means is the combination of everyone who is applying, the entire collaboration's total income. So if you have 5 organizations that are applying, then it's the combined annual income from all 5 of those organizations. So be really careful. If you have any questions about this, of course, you can feel free to reach out to our team. We'll show you the email address to send messages to us later on. One thing that's really important, and one thing we want to really note, is that this type of work really is stronger when organizations are working together. If it's interdisciplinary, so for example, journalists working alongside epidemiologists or immunologists, doctors, hospitals, other important organizations, and if a collaborative approach is taken. So we really, really want to encourage organizations to collaborate together. The reason is because this is a global issue, and this is a universal challenge that we all must face together. And so we are expecting amazing ideas from all of you. But it is going to be much more powerful if organizations and brilliant journalists working with healthcare providers are working together to reach audiences in a coordinated, collaborative fashion. So just to be clear, if you are a single newsroom, you can apply for this funding on your own. What we are saying, though, is that if you have folks who are from different parts of this ecosystem, so healthcare providers, healthcare experts, others, academics, NGOs, others, and or if you're working with other news organizations together to come up with a collaborative project, we will be more likely to consider the funding for that project. Also note that while $3 million is a great amount, it is a global fund. And so we will be, taking into consideration many applications from around the world. And so, the more that you can show that collaborative approach, that interdisciplinary approach, the better and the stronger your application will be. So another note, we are in the here and now. The pandemic is upon us. The vaccines are coming. So we really need these projects to launch as quickly as possible. So in the application, really emphasize when you think that you can get this project off the ground and explain it. And also the project should be finished and completed within 12 months of obtaining the funding. One thing that's really important to note is that we will not fund existing initiatives, right? So if you already have something going, we're not going to be funding an existing project. Also, we will not fund any expenses until you have been approved for funding and a contract has actually been signed by both sides. So be very cognizant that even if you're ready and raring to go, if you do get accepted into this program and to receive funding, you do need to wait until we go through the contracting process before you start spending any money. So eligibility, very important question. These, and please pay attention because we will be evaluating the applications based on this eligibility criteria. First and foremost, we want to make sure that whatever we fund is having an impact. We know that these ideas are going to be out of the box, and some may, some of this involves some experimentation and risk taking. That is totally fine. But what we want to know is how you are going to assess the effect of the fact checks that you are publishing. So what is your methodology for measuring success and impact? So specifically, are fact checks clarifying misconceptions that readers have rather than reaffirming something they already know? That's really important, making sure that you're actually fighting the misinformation as opposed to just reaffirming somebody's already conceived notion. How will the fact check affect the reach of the related misinformation? Is it going to help to prevent people from sharing, from spreading the misinformation? How can you actually measure that and capture the success of this? And also, how is this impact different to what would have been possible if you didn't get funding, right? So what the status quo is the status quo. This is, what's happening now. How does your project actually improve the situation for whoever your target audience is? This framework must have both qualitative and quantitative elements, which means that, of course, you need to be able to describe what you are measuring and how you're going to assess whether something is impactful. So that can be from, feedback from different people who will participate or in whatever project you're working on. But it also needs to have quantitative elements, which means that you need to be able to measure somehow, whether it's reach, readership, pre and post testing of people, whatever it is. However you're looking to do this, please make sure that you very clearly illustrate how you will be measuring the impact and success of what your project is happening, how your project is working. You have to really explain who you are reaching with this project and with your fact checks. And just to be clear, this is meant to bring fact checking in particular and fighting misinformation to audiences, right? So, while some of course, a lot of journalism and a lot of work on this area has been writing explainers about how does the vaccine work and what is it? This is really intended to specifically counter misinformation. So you need to specifically address how you're going to measure the audience and how you're going to reach that audience. One of the things that's really important to us is encouraging the direct outreach to underserved audiences. There are quite a number of people out there who are very educated, who have internet access, who are able to, get the information they need and have the time to be able to do it. What we are trying to target are communities that are impacted by misinformation or who do not have the same kind of access to fact checks that others have. And so you can take this from a number of different kinds of categories. Underserved audiences could be if in your community you find that young mothers are particularly target for misinformation related to vaccines, then please definitely indicate that. And if you have any data to help illustrate this, whether it's studies or any kind of statistics, then certainly please make sure to indicate that as well. Explain why this audience is underserved. If you find that rural communities or communities with less internet access are underserved, how are you going to reach them? And what is the unique thing that you're doing, the unique action, the unique project that you are taking to make sure to access this audience and make sure that they have access to this information? Other things, really one thing that's really important is expertise. So expertise in fact checking and debunking is really important. And actually an application cannot succeed in this fund unless you are working with a partner that has experience and expertise in specifically fact checking misinformation. Even if you're a news organization that doesn't do this yourself, if you partner with a fact-checking organization that has a strong record of fact-checking, then that is fine. But you must have expertise in fact-checking as part of the project. Also, because this is a very specific topic related to health and immunization, you really ought to make sure that you have partners who are specifically experts in health and immunization. And this is a really important point because what we want to support are interdisciplinary collaborative projects that bring the expertise from many different realms towards the fight against misinformation. And our hope is that this funding can help smooth that process and make innovation and collaboration easier. As I mentioned, collaboration, the project must be interdisciplinary. It has to be collaborative in nature. We want things to be innovative. And so whether it's, producing a new format, methodology, structure, distribution mechanism. And when we say this, we're not talking about the latest and greatest fancy big buzzword technology. It could be as simple as we want to reach communities where people do not have ongoing access to the internet. So we want to encounter misinformation through community radio or through flyers or something that is, a different technology. It doesn't have to just be fancy technology when we talk about innovation. What we're talking about is creative ways to reach underserved populations and to reach them in a way that is particularly resonant, that gets the message across. So you can be creative and think about, is it through visual, like comics? Is it through graphics? Is it through video? What is the way that you think is going to help to make sure that the messaging against misinformation is clear and it's valid, authoritative, and also will reach the audiences in a way that will help them in the future? And then, of course, because we are in the midst of this pandemic, how feasible is your project? I would say it's always, right now, this is the moment when we need this work. So if you're going to choose between something that's very, very complicated and will take a long time to get off the ground, or something that's simpler, but you can launch quickly, then, probably lean towards launching quickly and explain to us how fast your project can start, and essentially how is it important for your local market and for the audiences that you're trying to reach. Remember, your idea doesn't have to be, applicable for the whole world. It just has to apply and be relevant to whoever you are trying to reach with your project, right? Okay, so this is a really, really, really long and complicated slide. And luckily we will be leaving this recording up, so you can always just pause and read it later on your own time. But in order to help illustrate the difference between an eligible project and an ineligible project. So let's actually start with what is eligible, and maybe that will help. And then we'll go to the things that we know for sure are not eligible for this. So eligible projects, for example, a partnership between an established fact-checking project and a news organization or media outlet that has very, very deep roots with a specific underserved community. So maybe, for example, you are a website catering to young parents or new parents, right? But you don't have any background in fact checking, but you partner up with a fact checking organization and also a university or a hospital or academic community or something, healthcare providers, to make sure that those kinds of pieces of misinformation are able to be countered on your platform. So you bring the audience, right? And then the fact checkers bring the fact checking, and then the healthcare providers bring the health expertise. A new format, another idea could be a new format that is really trying to make fact checks about COVID-19 immunization clearer and more effective, about kind of helping to counter concerns about the vaccine. This can be for audiences that are explicitly targeted by misinformation, right? So specific communities of people, if they are more likely to be targeted by misinformation, explain how you are going to work to reach that audience, and kind of counter that misinformation in a language and a format that resonates with them. It could be more of a technical tool. So it could be a tool that assesses whether people have read a fact check, but also perhaps can assess, before the intervention and after the intervention, whether or not they understand something that's been debunked or fact check. So it can be a broader tool that can be perhaps used by more than just your organization, by others as well. A tip line for doctors. So that could be an example where, in your community, you have a community of healthcare practitioners, and suddenly they can actually have a way to directly tell you what they're hearing in terms of misinformation. Or it could be a community of social workers or NGOs who can also provide tips about what they're hearing from people about their fears about the vaccine, which will give essentially some clues and some leads to fact checkers so that they can write fact checks that will directly address concerns that people have, right? So connecting the community with the fact checkers, right? So that's another example of some kind of project that might be eligible. And then another one could just be a collaborative platform for journalists and doctors to jointly publish fact checks, right? So, these can be small initiatives. They can be big, nationwide initiatives. What we care about is the thought behind who you're trying to reach, how you're going to do it, how you're going to measure your success, and then how you are going to make sure that you are able to amplify the great work that all of you are doing. So those are just examples. And by the way, this is just a list of examples to show you the kinds of ideas that we're thinking of. But if you have a different idea, then please very much submit it. This is not an exclusive list and that you can only do the things that you see here. It really should be your ideas from your knowledge of your communities that will help to really bring out the kind of ideas that we'll hopefully be able to fund. So ineligible projects. So these are projects that we would not fund. A simple project that aims to publish explainers about the COVID-19 vaccine kind of your run-of-the-mill, just journalism about the COVID-19 vaccine, we wouldn't fund that because that does not specifically get to the area of misinformation or of amplifying fact checks, right? If you already have a debunking project and you just want to basically apply for funding to cover existing staff or funding or to grow social media reach through paid ads, that will not be eligible. We are looking for new ideas, new collaborations, new initiatives targeting specific communities that are underserved in this moment. A project that also would not be ineligible would be one that publishes fact checks but has no team member with a track record. So again, whatever your project application, if you as an organization do not have experience with fact checking, that is okay, but you need to partner with an established fact checker. And we can talk a little bit more about how you determine, what is an established fact checker. But it's really important that fact checking expertise is part of the project and included in your application. Otherwise, we will not consider it. A project that is exclusively academic, a research study, that sort of thing, will not be funded. This is intended to be really getting into the grassroots, getting on the ground, really bringing fact checks into the communities that are really underserved at this very, very critical moment. And also the project needs to be about COVID-19 immunization misinformation. So obviously there are all kinds of misinformation related to the pandemic, related to the economic impact of the pandemic, and things like government shutdowns or lockdowns or opening up, travel bans, whatever it is. That's not what we're funding here. It's all important, but this particular fund is specifically targeted towards COVID-19 immunization misinformation. Also, of course, there are broader initiatives about vaccine hesitancy broadly. That is not what we're trying to support. We're specifically focused on COVID-19 immunization misinformation. Other things that are not eligible, projects that are run by a government institution are not eligible to apply. Many public health experts will have links to government institutions. They can certainly be part of the project team, but they cannot be the lead applicant on the application for the fund. So just to be clear, in a collaboration, you'll have many different individuals or institutions that are involved, but you have to have one organization that's going to be the lead applicant. They're the one who submits the application to Google and explains the nature of the project. They're going to be the ones who are going to be responsible for the communication and signing of the documentation with Google and the administration of the funding. And so any government affiliated health experts or others, they can be part of the team, but they cannot be the lead applicant for the process, for the application process. And importantly, any projects with ties to producers of COVID-19 vaccines are not going to be eligible. So, if your proposed project is going to work with a company that is actually making a vaccine, then it will not be eligible for this particular fund. So we have a really crazy quick timeline, and I know that this has been a bit of a burden for a lot of people, but I want to make it very clear that the reason why we have such a short timeline is because we want to make sure that we can get the funding out as quickly as possible and get these programs launched. So, right now the application opened last week, January 12th, and the application closes January 31st. I know it's not a lot of time, but our hope is that we will still get lots of great ideas and applications, particularly for me from the Asia Pacific region. But this is a hard deadline. We will not be granting exceptions. So please plan your time accordingly. And also, if you have any questions about the application process, please do ask them in this town hall, or I will provide an email address that you can submit your questions to. But I would say, don't delay, don't wait till the last minute. Keep in mind the time zone differences. If you are asking questions about the application on January 31st, APAC time, you may not get an answer in time for you to submit. So please do start this application process earlier. On March 1st, so from when applications close until March 1st, a project team, of which I am part of, will review all the applications to make sure that they comply with eligibility requirements and others. A jury of external jurors and a few Google experts will be judging and voting on the final selection on March 1st. So really, this is a very quick timeline. And then March 3rd, all the selected projects will be announced. And like I said, I am personally very hopeful that we're going to get lots of amazing applications from the Asia Pacific region. But I know it's a very tight timeline, but rest assured, we will be working very, very hard to assess all of your applications after the admission applications close, and give everyone a really fair, reading hearing. One thing to note about this is that after the applications close, the project team will be reviewing the applications, and we may also come to you for an interview or for more information during that 1 month period of time in February. So definitely, keep your ears and eyes peeled for any communication via email regarding interviews or requests for more information. If you are going to be on holiday and you are the point of contact, make sure that you are still reading your emails, or you have someone who can keep tabs, because of the short time frame here, we've definitely had situations in previous rounds of the Innovation Challenge and others where we had trouble getting in touch with the person of contact. In other previous rounds of the Innovation Challenge and other types of funds, we had a longer period of time to interview and to talk to people, so it was okay. Because this is just 1 month and also the shortest month of the year, really just make sure that if you are the point of contact for your application, that you make yourself available to answer questions or provide more information during that month. So just a couple of tips for all of you applicants out there. Read the website, the terms and conditions, and the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, very, very carefully. I'm going to actually now just quickly toggle to a different page so you guys can see what it looks like. Hold on for 1 second. I'm going to stop this and then share screen again. Application Chrome tab. This is what our website looks like. Okay. And you can see here that we have an overview. There's how to apply. There's lots of information here, about the application process, your eligibility requirements, eligible regions. Please do double check and make sure here. Eligible projects, ideas, how the funding will work. And if you want to learn more about who is on the project team or who is on the jury, you can definitely look. We're really, really thrilled because we have some incredible people who are really at the top of their fields in the areas of immunization, healthcare information, misinformation, and others who are a part of our jury. So, you really are getting essentially the best of the best from a global perspective on the jury. So rest assured that your application will really be viewed very, very critically. And then importantly, here are the FAQs. All right. So really important for you to read all of these things because if it's just critically important that you read all these things. And if you have questions, please do us all a favor and make a point to look at the FAQs and also, read the application before you get started. All right, because guarantee you, most likely the question that you have, if it's a broad question, it'll be answered by the frequently asked questions. If you are not sure still, please feel free to reach out to us, and I will show you our email address very, very quickly soon. But this is really important. Another thing to note, which will be really helpful, is that if you click here, you can actually download the full application in PDF form. As you can see, that when you're filling out the application, it is a web form, and it says save for later, but to be honest, I always like to keep, cover my bases. I think it's better for you, if you can, to really take a look at the PDF, put your answers ideally into some sort of like Word document, Google Doc, whatever it is, so that all you have to do when you're dealing with this website is copy and paste your answers in. All right. One thing that's really important to note, and I'm now going to also try to share the PDF so you can see what it looks like. Just hold on for 1 second. Let me just share the PDF. All right. You will see here that we have word limits for each of the questions. All right. Please adhere to the word limits. You should be able to explain your project and your organization in the word count that is available here. All right. So really spend that time to make sure that your prose is very crisp and you can really explain exactly what you're doing. Increasing and exceeding the word limit is not going to actually help your application. In fact, it may even make it more confusing. So really think about how you can keep your application to the different word limits for each of these questions. A really important part that I would really suggest that you review carefully is actually the issue of the budget. All right, so in this project, you will have to describe your budget and how you're going to spend the money. And you should also share your spreadsheet of how you're going to divide up all the funding. It's really important to note that the way that we want you to structure this is for the total budget. So remember that Google will fund up to 1 million USD, US dollars for this. But in fact, your budget that's only 80% of your total budget, because your organization or your collaboration of organizations needs to be supporting at least 20% or more of the overall budget. So when you are showing us your work of your budget description, this is not how much you're asking from Google. This is your total budget, okay, of how much is going to be spent. Then in another line, you can explain how much you were asking for from Google. But when you are describing your budget, you need to explain the whole budget, including what you are spending, what your organization is spending. All right. And then you can see here that there's also going to be questions about the impact assessment framework. It's really important that you think very carefully about this. And also, one other part of this application is going to be a short presentation of 10 slides or fewer that describes your project. This is going to be, and you also, and a detailed project budget, and you're going to send it to this email address, vcm-fund at google.com. You need to include the application ID which you will receive after you submit the web form. So after you submit the web form for the application, you will then need to email vcm-fund at google.com with your application ID and in the subject line of your email. This is super important because we expect to get many applications. And in order to make our lives easier and also to make sure that your supplemental information is connected to the application, we really insist that you make a point to link it up with the app ID. That way we can know for sure. All right. Now I'm going to go back to my presentation and share the last few slides, which are here. All right. So, download the application form. Other tips: download the application form ahead of completing. Complete the application in English. That is really important because the jury and the project team will be reviewing this application in English. And do it now because the sooner you get it in, the better it is, and the more you can rest and relax. And then just a few notes about things that are people who are organizations that are not eligible. Remember that solely or substantially government-owned entities are not eligible to apply for this funding. Individuals are not eligible to apply unless you are a registered freelancer or sole trader or the equivalent in your country. If you have questions about this, please do email us and we can try to do our best to help give you a clear answer. Also, organizations or individuals with ties to a COVID-19 vaccine producer, also not eligible. All right. We are here to answer your questions. So please do email us at vcm-fund at google.com. And we will do our best to answer your questions in a timely manner. And apply today at goo.gle/vcm-fund. Right? Take a screenshot of this photo. You can also just look it up on Google. You'll be able to find the application. But this email address, vcm-fund at google.com, goes to a group of people who work at Google who are working on this project around the world, and we'll do our best to answer as quickly as possible. But please do all of us a favor and ensure a timely answer. If you have a question, look and read the FAQs and the terms and conditions and the application first, because quite likely your actual question will be answered there. If you have additional questions or you have questions about your own specific situation, then of course, please feel free to email us. And at this point, I think we're going to go to the question and answer session. So let's get started. Okay. All right. Let me move this and go straight to the questions. So we have a few. Let me see. Okay. Let's see. One question we have is, okay, it's stated that it's better if the applicant is recognized by a third party. What are other possibilities for an applicant to prove that other than being an IFCN signatory? That is a great question. Of course, International Fact-Checking Network is a global standard. So if you are a signatory or if one of your partners in the collaboration is a signatory, then that is great. But of course, we know that there are people who are going through that process of applying or have not. Demonstrating your fact-checking can be as simple as submitting links to your fact checks on your website. All right. If you publish fact checks, and you have been, what I would suggest is, let's say you've been doing this on your news website for a year. Then in your application, you can say, we have been actively creating fact checks over the past year. This is our project. This is where you can find information, and then submit the link. If it is in a different language, please be helpful and try to be descriptive, and explain if you have any sort of processes or ethical standards or kind of standard operating procedures that you do on your fact checks, so that we can assess your record of being a fact checker. Hope that's helpful. Is that the only question we have? Well, it looks like that's the only question we have right now. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes to answer some questions, because I think that there's a little bit of a delay, and also just want to make sure that you guys have time. I know I've been talking at you guys for quite a long time, for about 45 minutes. But while we're waiting for additional questions, let me just also talk about a few other pieces. Oh, sorry, there's a clarification from Gordon. Let's see. Projects run by government are ineligible. What about a project run by an existing fact-check unit that is a small, independent joint project of a university and government broadcaster? So this is a bit of a tricky one. What I would suggest that you do is, because different ways of government funded, government run are going to be different. So what I suggest in this case is to specifically email us at the vcm-fund at google.com with your specific situation in terms of the structure and governance, and we can perhaps better advise. I think that I don't want to give a broad answer to this question, because I think that depending on government funded news organizations versus government government run, there's a little bit of a distinction, and it does vary by country. So my suggestion to you and to anyone else who is considering this is to directly email us, and then with your specific situation and also the entities involved, and then we can better answer your question. Hope that's helpful. All right, so there's another question. Does Google have specific priority communities in mind? We do not. We actually want you to tell us where the need is, because you will have a better idea about your own communities than we do. So what I would suggest on that is please make a point to explain to us. Don't assume. We do have a project team that is quite global, as well as a jury that's very global. But don't make assumptions that we know why a community is underserved, right? Or a particular target. Assume that you are talking to people who are not from wherever you are from, and explain it to us. We don't have any particular communities in mind. We just want to know that whatever this project and whatever intervention you're pitching is going to help and have an impact. And again, it doesn't have to impact an entire country or an entire region. It can be very niche. Just be very clear about why there is need. Are there any other questions? Oh, there's another one. So can fact checkers collaborate with small newsrooms? Yes, absolutely. That's a great collaboration, right? Because the truth is that sometimes small newsrooms, they cover their local communities very well, but perhaps they don't have the staffing to run their own fact-checking units. So the more collaboration between the expert fact checkers and the health experts and small newsrooms, that's great. That said, big newsrooms can also, apply and are very much welcome to apply. Everyone can bring different strengths to their applications. Our only request is that you explain what your strength is and why your project will make a difference. And one note that I'm going to make about the applications. I know that $1 million sounds like a lot of money. Really suggest that you make sure that however much you're requesting is actually how much you need to accomplish your goal, right? And so we very much welcome small applications for small pots of funding. If you think that that's, an intervention that's going to be very valuable, really encourage that. Absolutely. I would not suggest that you always just go to the biggest number. And to be honest, as somebody who has been on the project team for a number of these different kinds of applications, we always look a little skeptically if someone just puts the maximum amount and doesn't back it up with why they need that much. So that will work against you. Definitely suggest that you really think through what you're trying to do, how much you need to do it, and then work your budget from there. And don't try to pad it, because guarantee you we'll see through it or we'll ask you about it. So it's better to kind of bring that sort of, scrutiny to your budgeting ahead of time before we have to do it. I think we have another question. Okay. Is it okay if the first phase of the project is exploring who the underserved audiences are? I would not suggest that, to be honest, because we don't have time. This really is meant to address, it's really meant to address the need very quickly. And so we really do expect that your application should very clearly articulate who the underserved audience is and how your specific intervention that you want us to fund is going to tackle that specific audience. So that would be my suggestion, is to do the due diligence ahead of time and really be crisp in your explanation to us on it. Any other questions? Any other questions that we have here? I think that I'm going to give it just another couple of minutes so people can ask their questions as they need to, because this is the moment. I know I have a feeling that a number of people who are probably on this town hall are people who I know personally. If you can of course feel free to reach out to me, but I will also be just adding the vcm-fund at google.com group. So I really do encourage you, and part of it also is I really encourage you to also email vcm-fund at google.com, because the thing is that if you're asking a question, quite likely a lot of other people are asking questions. So it's really important for us as a global team who will be running this project to be able to know all the different questions that are out there. I think that this town hall is the first town hall in APAC for sure, and the second one of all the ones in the world. So guarantee you that the questions you're asking right now will help us to have better info sessions and town halls in the future. Okay, we got another question here. Can the results of the project be widely published, or the data obtained will be fully owned by Google? No, you can absolutely publish the results of your project for sure. This is your project. We just want to support it. We don't own the IP on this work. It's all entirely yours. If you build tech, it's yours. We just want to support those efforts. So, and you should absolutely feel free to, market widely and share any best practices. Actually, we encourage it. We would love for all of these amazing projects and ideas to gain traction and to be shared among the community of fact checkers who are fighting misinformation on, vaccine misinformation around the world. And my hope is, is that APAC will produce a number of really great ideas and a lot of great impact, and we'll be able to share it with the rest of the world and really show, unfortunately, for good or for bad, we were the ones who were first affected by COVID-19 last year. It's hard to believe it was a year ago. But I think that we can really be part of and help to contribute to the solutions on this as well. And really looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. I think that we have incredible examples of collaboration around the region, and I would love to see even more collaboration and show how collaboration really is the way forward and how we need to really tackle things together. Okay, so we have another question. Yes, the project needs to be specific on COVID-19 vaccine misinformation. So we will not support projects that are more broadly about COVID-19 or the impact of the pandemic or any of that. I think it has to be specifically targeted on COVID-19 vaccine misinformation. All right. I think that well, you know what? We still have 4 minutes. So why don't I'll just keep talking until you guys get your last little questions in. This is, like I said, this is the one and only English language town hall that we have in APAC. There will be other ones scheduled in Europe time zones and the US time zone. So if you come away from this town hall and you have a burning question and you're feeling sadness and regret that you didn't get a chance to ask it, you can always join another one of the town halls. If you go to the YouTube channel for the Google News Initiative, you'll be able to see all the different town halls that are going to be happening. They're same format as this one. You're going to hear someone like me talking a lot at you in a presentation for a while, and then you'll get a chance to ask your questions. So definitely encourage you to, if you have other questions and you can't think of them in the next 3 minutes, feel free to join another town hall or just email us and we'll try to get them. Let's see. Now, what other things can I suggest as you consider these applications? Oh, one question that somebody had was, what kind of, like, if you're doing a collaboration, do you need to submit, like, contracts or MOUs between the different organizations? And the short answer is no, you don't need to do that for an application. Basically, if you all come to a verbal agreement about the scope of the project and everyone kind of signs off and likes the way that the application looks, then the lead applicant can go ahead and submit it. We don't need you to prove that, like, you've already signed MOUs between each organization or whatnot, right? But I think it's important for everyone who is going to be part of the application, any organizations or individuals, that it's very clear that they understand what their role is, what their responsibilities are, how the budget's going to be divided. That's very clearly mapped out. And also, you will need the financial information about each organization's revenue to count towards a total. Because remember, we will only fund up to 50% of the total annual revenue of all the different partners in a collaboration. And also, just to save yourself a lot of pain, it's always good to just be very clear about who's doing what. We've all been in group school projects when we were kids, where it was not clear who was going to do the work, and then it caused trouble later on. So better to work that out sooner rather than later. All right, so let's see. Another question: is it possible to partner with resident representatives of international NGOs who also carry out misinformation and media literacy trainings for youth? Yes, absolutely. So you can, the only restrictions are the ones that we've mentioned about, government owned organizations and government supported. Again, what I suggest is, if you have questions about the specific partners and you want to get clarity, please do email us about that. One thing I will say is, if you're working with international NGOs, it is really important to make sure that you get sign off from whatever level of that organization you need to make sure that you file the application. As I mentioned before, we will, after we review all the applications, we will likely come back to some folks to ask for potentially interviews or for additional information. What I would suggest is, for the interview, if it comes to that you make a representative from every partner organization in the collaboration available for that interview. And so, again, making sure that you're clearly aligned on the roles and responsibilities and activities is going to be very important. But absolutely, we definitely want, we definitely want people to create partnerships with local organizations, international organizations, whoever you think is going to provide the most impact for the project. And then there's another question about the 3 million. So this is the budget worldwide. It is 3 million US dollars for the entire globe. We do not limit. We're not going to have quotas for budget per area or country. We are looking, as much as possible, to have a fair distribution around the world in terms of the funding. But really, it is a function of how good the applications are. That is going to be the most important thing. We're not going to artificially, just dump money in one place because we said we wanted to divide it equally. It really is going to be a function of how good the applications are, what kind of ideas we get. But we do want to make sure that this is truly global and that we will be supporting organizations and projects around the world. And then I think there's another last question. Can we collaborate with radio stations? Sure. I think that, again, the only requirements are based on, issues with, like, government-owned and organizations. And as I mentioned, any questions about this, please read the terms and conditions, the website, and the FAQs to make sure that every partner organization that you have listed in your application does qualify and is eligible to apply. If you have any questions, please definitely email us at vcm at Google, vcm-fund at google.com. I'm going to actually, while we're here, I'm going to just quickly one more time put the website or the email address here so you guys have it. This is where you go if you have any questions. But first, as I mentioned, please go to the website and see if your questions are answered there. I think that we are over time. So thank you so much for, listening to me drone on for an hour. I hope that this was a helpful guide to the application process and to the fund. Really looking forward to reading your applications, and any questions that you have, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are really so thrilled to be able to offer this program, and I'm really just, I cannot wait to see what you all do with this. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your continued hard work fighting misinformation around the region, and really look forward to seeing what you guys come up with. Have a great afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are, and talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much. Take care.